Hello, my name is Kafui Dey. My guest is Professor Kwesi Aning. He's a security analyst, and today we're talking everything security in Ghana. If you haven't yet subscribed, now is the time to do so and hit the bell so that more content like this comes your way. Prof, always good to talk to you.
Well, this is very good. It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
What's it like being a security analyst?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you have a critical and a contrarian bend to what is perceived as security and how to understand it, then you get a lot of criticism because you are not repeating what people expect you to repeat. But it's a fascinating job. You never know what the night will bring and then the morning. But let me just start by telling you the concerns, particularly of my younger sister when I got my doctorate. She woke me up much later in the night after the party, the day I got my doctorate, and said, "But Kwesi, this is your security thing. How will you get a job?" So that has become the standard joke in my family, that unfortunately there's a lot of pressure on my time. So it's been a very fascinating 42 years or so. Unfortunately, the problems are getting worse, more diverse, much more complex, and increasingly, threatening the ability of the state to look after itself.
What drew you to security?
It was purely by chance, actually. I mean, my first degree was in history. My MPhil also in history, focusing on how Nkrumah used non-alignment as a tool, first to build the Akosombo Dam, raise the funding for the Akosombo Dam, and then also contributed to establishing the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. But as an historian, one of my lecturers at the University of Ghana, the late Dr. Kafui Dey, was such a fantastic teacher of pre-colonial Ghanaian history. So when I finished my MPhil, my interest was to write a doctorate on pre-colonial frontier diplomacy. Unfortunately, in Copenhagen, I didn't get a supervisor. So
In Denmark?
In Denmark, yes. So I, met one professor, the late Roger Lees, who said, "Look, history, political science, international relations, you need to change your thinking and the approach. But if you can get the empirical side right, I will teach you the theory." So that is how I came to security studies, purely by chance. And I don't think I've regretted ever since.
How does it make you feel, this field?
It makes me feel at peace with myself. It gives me the opportunity to first understand the challenges that we face and how a wrong understanding, assessment, and response can worsen or can put us in danger. Unfortunately, over time, our capacity or capacities to look at the problem as is and provide multiple options for response has not been the most satisfactory. I think one can talk about the small arms and light weapons menace in Ghana. Probably that has been one of my most consistent topics for talking about this. From 2004-05, when the available unregistered weapons were around 500,000, to 10 years later, where we assessed it to be around 1.2 million. We are going to undertake a new study right now and looking at how the context of West Africa's security has changed dramatically with the collapse of Mali, Burkina Faso, the coups in Guinea, the increasing instability in La Côte d'Ivoire and elsewhere, that I would be surprised if illegal proliferation it's not over and above 2 million. And I think we can also see it from the presence of small arms and light weapons in fairly ordinary community, conflicts that earlier on, weapons were not involved. I think prior to this conversation, I mentioned a video I saw about Soto and the Homo celebration, and people firing as if we were in an American, Western film. There's this guy with a pistol, firing. And it raises particular concerns as to how we've allowed this to progress to this extent. So the real joy, but also the challenge of what I do is that you don't make any friends.
You're friendless, almost.
Yeah. And that is where the credibility comes in. When people want to use your information for what they want, then you are their friend. When the same information goes against them, particularly when they get into power, then you are not my friend. The advantage of critical objectivity is that even those who are upset and annoyed with you for saying something knows that you are not saying it because of some pecuniary interest or a desire for some benefits of sort. They know you for who you are, shooting straight from the hip and saying it as it is. Whoever comes in the line of criticism must accept it for what it is. So I always say that this is not about a competition for being liked. And I've always told people, you know what, my mother is 91, my father is 91. And they've always told us, look, let me see your friends before we die. Because when we die and they come in their big V8s and whatever, we won't see them. So I am not intimidated by this notion that you are very troublesome and we won't come to your father's funeral or your mother's funeral. That's your business, not mine. I am at peace with myself. My parents are proud. My children are very proud of me. My schoolmates are. So truly, I don't lie awake at night as to whether what I've said has won me friends or not. And the good thing with this country, however, is that I don't feel directly threatened by what I do and say and write. I think we've moved on to a point where we are tolerant of people's views. The last 8 years was extremely, excruciatingly difficult, because people used levers of trying to use, reducing my pay.
It got to that level?
Yeah. And the pay was reduced, calling my boss to deal with me and all that. But those who did that, when I see them, I just laugh. Okay, you failed in driving me out of this country or seeking to destroy me, but I'm still around. The good thing is that people will always give you a heads up as to how to be careful. But all in all, I think there's space to do, the kind of work that I do.
So the author Brian Tracy says, if you have 2 frogs to eat the bigger one first. Let's bring that to security. If you had to eat, which is the biggest security frog that has to be eaten? If we
Right
have to
now.
eat- right now in Ghana.
The biggest, probably we mean insecurity frog.
Insecurity frog.
Is the individuals mandated with the authority and the power to protect the Republic of Ghana. We need to eat those people who are not delivering. We need to deal with the people whose capacities to protect this country are terribly weak. Let me give you a couple of examples. I'm sure everybody would have been thinking, I will talk terrorism, violent extremism, illicit financial flows, the Rosewood menace, Galamsey. But how have we gotten here? We've gotten here because the individuals mandated by the Republic of Ghana and paid with our taxpayers' money have failed this country. So if we take what? Galamsey. How have you come to where we are if people have not failed? Let me start with the National Security Strategy document. The National Security Strategy document, started in 19, finished in 2021, thereabouts, categorizes the threats that we face in 4 levels. High probability, high impact, high probability, low impact, low probability, high impact, low probability, low impact. In there are all the challenges that we are facing, identified, how to deal with them. We have Act 1030 of 2020, the Security and Intelligence Agencies Act, that disaggregates the levels of decision-making and early warning across board. We have the Signals Act, Act 1040, also of 2020, in which we've got to harness and coordinate and report, signaling where the challenges and the problems are. The question is that if we have an overarching document, that is the National Security Strategy document, that talks about harnessing, coordination, holistic approach, disaggregating the levels of the threats that we face and their probabilities and impact, then why are we where we are? So it is not that terrorists and violent extremists are stronger than we are, or that we don't know, but that the people who have been mandated to protect you and I have failed disastrously.
What are your theories behind their failures?
A lack of interest, poor supervision, limited or non-existent key performance indices in their contract letters. But the biggest frog, but I think I prefer toad.
It's uglier. Toads are uglier.
much.
Yeah, let's go for toads.
you know, that needs to be dealt with is the human factor in contributing to worsening and reducing our capacity to prevent and to degrade. Until we deal with this human factor in which our loyalty to the Republic of Ghana becomes the fulcrum around which we struggle for that public office, that chair, that authority to say what we say and do what we do until that human factor is transformed. When I cannot walk, we will be sitting in my garden having this conversation again. That is the biggest single threat
The
to this country.
the human factor.
The human factor.
Is it that people are not doing what they should do
People are not doing what
in terms of securing the country?
Yeah. Otherwise, I've mentioned the National Security Strategy document that lays out in exhaustive terms what the threats are. A document that says it's got to be revised every 3 or 4 years. We are almost in the 5th or 6th year since the document was put out there. Still have been revised. Because the nature of the threats are that they keep on moving up and down.
Moving targets.
Yes, they combine in different ways to pose different threats. And hopefully during the conversation we will come round to issues of threat and risk assessments. So that has not been done. We have the Security and Intelligence Agencies Act 1030 of 2020, that has also disaggregated the institutional framework from the national to the regional to the metropolitan, municipal, and district to respond to early warning challenges. So, how many reports have been written by district security councils, municipal security councils, metropolitan councils, and regional councils about the threat, about the Galamsey threat? Okay. We have a security and intelligence services, a security and intelligence committee of parliament. The first time we have had this. We have a defense and interior committee of parliament. Okay. The net influence of these two committees should be to strip all these organizations that must be providing the early warning and the actions into order. And I'll repeat it. The most threatening contribution to our insecurity is the human factor. The inability or incapacity of those mandated by law and our constitution to provide the protection. And that is the biggest challenge.
And in the challenge lies the solution, because if things change, things should change.
Well, I mean, if we get the appropriate people in office, why not? They will use the law, they will use the appointment letter and the marching orders given to them by the president. Let me give you another example. When the crisis in the Savannah region happened, I heard an MP say, he had spoken to the interior minister and he assured him that things will be done and all that. Then the NADMO regional director says, actually this is just a small conflict between two people, so he's surprised the thing has expanded. And therein lies the human factor that I am talking about. Where the crisis took place, I don't know whether it's a district or metropolitan or a municipal council. On these councils, there's the National Intelligence Bureau representative, there's the representative of the IGP or the police commander, there's NADMO, there's customs, there's immigration before the DC or the MC. When conflicts begin to brew, you respond at the same time as you get back to Accra. But when you tell me, I called the minister,
He's gone too many steps ahead.
and you are waiting. while the conflict is brewing. Now, I think I heard on some radio station that when the president arrived, he then ordered some ministers and some people who ought to have acted to quickly move there. Now, that's wrong. Okay, the president has given you the authority and the mandate to be his representative in Accra, at the regional level, at the metropolitan level, at the municipal level, and at the district level. The human factor is the single most threatening challenge to this country. But people don't want to take the risk in acting and doing what will be effective to prevent the challenges that we are facing.
That was exactly the question I was going to ask. Are people afraid of taking responsibility for any decisions they take, which make them wait for the highest authority to come and then instruct them, so that if it goes wrong, you say, Mr. President, it was your orders? Is that it?
That is what it looks like. Because, I mean, when I was working, and as the then director for whatever I had to do, I had a mandate, and I'll use that mandate, and, use the chain of command to provide appropriate information. But I think when we sit in those chairs, we should not be afraid also to take a decision or to take decisions that might cause displeasure. Right now, I think people have become way too cautious. Way too cautious. Otherwise, this decision will go against this ethnic group, this interest group. They will come begging. I can tell you, as just a poor academic, you get calls from on high. You get people coming to threaten you. You get people seeking to bribe you. But what do? You've got to use the mandate and the ethics of your profession and position to say, what, get out of my office.
You've had to do that a few times.
Plenty. I've told you, this is not a fashion parade for me. Because some of the food I eat, maybe you don't know how to cook it anyway. And maybe you like X type of drink. I like X-1 type. So truly, we've got to have that boldness and that determination to leave strong institutions behind, when we've served our term. Having a position with authority is not about making friends. It's about efficiency, delivery, and leaving processes and mechanisms that can and should be built on by those who come after you. I think we are driven too much by being liked. We want people to say good things about us. And that is hampering this drive and determination to deliver, and particularly for those in public office. The sum total of the security challenges that we are facing calls into question the effectiveness and the competence with which they are dealing with all this compounded and compounding, security challenges that we are facing.
When you put on your threat assessment glasses, what do you see?
Well, this is almost like being a Houdini of sorts, but one of the things that the last couple of years I have challenged the norm is this notion that the terrorists are coming down south. that the terrorists in some strange manner want to get to the coast. And therefore, they may want to come from the north and come all the way down to the coast. That is a narrative that quite a number of powerful multilateral organizations have been pushing. I don't think that assessment is right.
Why do you think they are pushing that story?
Sales, a sense of making us feel inadequate, a sense of making us feel as if we don't know what is on the ground if they don't tell us. And my issue is that, well, tell me where you've traveled to in the north, and I'll also tell you where I have been. Okay? I've done that trip in the last 5 years, maybe about 3 or 4 times. Okay? A rational calculus of what terrorists need and why they may want to come down south does not jive with the Ghana case. What do they want? They want highly precious, valuable assets. They don't need to come to the coast. I think Accra Dollar Power and Nkrane Abrewa have provided opportunities for those who want to buy gold to buy gold. For your listeners who, I think now most Ghanaians know about Nkrane Abrewa, this 10,000 people community with their own water supply, electricity supply, mining gold, and of course the old Accra Dollar Power. Once more, Kafui, it raises concerns about the human factor that I am talking about. So are we saying that with all our investments in aircrafts and drones and intelligence, that we didn't really know this thing? And that it had to take years before we found out that a community of 10,000
was undercover.
What's undercover?
For those who haven't heard about Accra Dollar Power, tell them what it is.
Accra Dollar Power is in the Savannah region, bordering the Ivorian state, in which probably about 35,000 people have for several years formed a community. Actually, its original name is Cindy, and have been mining gold. I mean, it's a community by itself.
Interesting name though, Accra Dollar Power.
Well, I mean, the gold gives a lot of dollars.
Yes.
You know, but the bigger concern is that a sovereign state with all the institutions in place allows these two communities to grow, to expand, and to get established with their own processes and procedures.
Own power sources.
Own power sources. And particularly for Nkrane Abrewa, when the community was destroyed, it was one hell of a Herculean task to drive them away. But the question is that you've driven them away to where? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think it's important for us to start a process of saying, look, we have this wonderful document called the National Security Strategy document. Can we begin a process of revision? Because in almost all countries, that revision is not 4 years as we have given to ourselves, but it's almost an annual, ongoing process. Because these threats change, they combine in different forms to create new challenges. You know, I know that we have a fusion center that focuses on counterterrorism, that is doing great work, but it cannot be done in isolation of what the challenges are all over the country. You know, so there's quite a lot of work that we need to do, a lot of work.
So the notion that the terrorists are coming down from the north all the way to the coast, you don't need to. There are places where you can do your thing.
No, the guns are in abundance. The bullets are all over. And I mean, if you remember, may his soul rest in peace, the late defense minister stated that about 40,000 military grade ammunition or bullets had been transferred to national security without the appropriate documents.
Has anybody's head been had?
No. So who ordered those bullets to be sent to national security? Because Kafui, national security, as we know it, is not an operational entity. It's an administrative, supervisory entity in which you and I, representing different security institutions, are members of the council. And when there's a problem, the council says, okay, Kafui, you go back to your parent institution, you are the boss. We give you this duty and a mandate to solve this problem. So the council is not an operational thing. So where did the 40,000 bullets go?
What's the structure like? So national security, how does it relate to interior and defense?
So interior is a member of the council. Defense is a member of the council. The president is the chair of the National Security Council. So with all kinds of allied institutions. So when that council meets, and if the Signals Act was working well, and if Act 1030, the Intelligence and Security Agencies Act, was also working well, then the council will have in front of it a couple of pages that have been synthesized from the analysis of Greater Accra region, for example, in which the council's meeting 2 months ago would have possibly predicted that based on our assessment of what our agents have picked on the ground, this year's homo war at different places might be violent. So we need to do a quiet retrieval of talking to the different, clans or stool houses to ensure that, we can ameliorate the tensions that are simmering. So for Teshi to happen, for Sotom to happen, and for other areas to have experienced these tensions, that it means the districts and municipal metropolitan security councils are not working well.
Is it safe to say that when you see these apparently sudden flare-ups, it means something has gone wrong in the security?
These flare-ups are never sudden. I mean, the flare-ups have a rationality to them. What my dear old friend David Keane characterized as a rational kind of madness. So when we see it happening, then either the signals were not picked up, they were picked up but not analyzed well, or they were picked up, analyzed well, passed up in the chain, and somebody forgot to pass it on to the very top. So there are different reasons why these things do happen, but they're happening way too frequently and with an intensity that is very disturbing.
You talked about having a contrarian mindset to do this work well. What does that mean? Break it down for me.
Well, so a contrarian mindset is always asking alternative, questions.
Contrary to what people are saying.
Yeah. Or what people want to believe. Or perceive. So the usual, approach is to say, why this, why that, or how. But my approach is always to say, what is it good for that this is happening?
In other words, who is benefiting?
Yeah. So we need to look at possible incentives or the possibility of gaining particular outcomes that benefits particular individuals, and that expectation of the benefit then leads to particular types of behavior, leads to particular forms of networking. So from where I sit, there is nothing that says, oh, but, why is Kafui and Kwesi, who are good friends, suddenly beginning to fight or quarrel? What is it that we are quarreling about, and what is it good for?
Let's use this template for Galamsey.
Yeah.
What is good?
What is it good for?
What is Galamsey good for?
Well, what Galamsey is good for can be disaggregated in different ways. One, those who facilitate Galamsey. And here I'm taking out the masses who are digging and washing. They are not important in
the guys on the ground.
Yeah. They are those who can be dispensed with. Why, with the security document that I have mentioned, do we authorize people to mine in reserved forestry areas? Those who issue those licenses and those who registered those companies, multiple companies, are not ignorant of the environmental damage that is causing an existential threat to this country. So what is it good for? Is the financial benefit.
So follow the money.
Yeah. But what kind of money? Because we also do know that Galamsey is good for those who seek to launder dirty money from Europe and come here to buy gold. We also do know that Galamsey is good for those who engage in illicit financial flows. Okay, so the tighter the gold board squeezes the control over the purchase, the assaying, the registration of companies, the more desperate these people are going to be, and they're going to fight back.
So we should expect fight back, desperate.
Yeah, sure. Because the estimated loss of money to the state is at least $2.5 billion annually. Now, that is no petty cash. So for the multiple interest groups, the organized, criminals, the money launderers from Europe, the purchasers from across the sub-region and much further afield, people have basically destroyed our collective, future with this Galamsey for their personal gain. And when the republic or the state says, I want to seize the opportunity to take control of my resources and how it's mined and how it is used, they will fight the state back. Let's not forget that in Italy in the 70s and 80s, the mafia fought the Italian state by murdering judges, prosecutors, politicians. Okay, when the monies involved are so huge, the willingness and the capacity by those who think their interests have been threatened and undermined must not be underestimated.
So this helicopter crash that occurred a couple of weeks back, without even buying into any conspiracy theories, could it be part of the fight back?
Well, I think there's a committee that has been established. I think probably one or two committees. I think they are working. They've been given a month. I think the people on the committee will ask some really very difficult questions and then try to find all the explanations that we need. So probably I should not respond.
Would you have loved to be on that committee though?
No.
Why not?
I think it's always, it depends upon the terms of reference. I haven't seen the terms of reference, but a little that I know that I think it's it's a mainly technical thing. If after the report is brought, it says we need to look at other aspects, potential aspects to what could have contributed to or specific actions by individuals who were on that flight, and looking back to some of their actions and utterances and seeing the networks and who might have been angry or stuff. Yeah.
So a lot of triangulation.
Yes, a lot of them. But it would mean a truly detailed understanding of the intricacies of a whole lot of things, of which, of course, the Galamsey is one.
If we don't succeed in pressing the neck of Galamsey, what is your projection for the next 5-10 years?
I don't think we have 5 to 10 years. I think we have just about 3 years max. We will start buying water. If we need to buy clean water to cook, to drink, and probably also to bath, because the water treatment plants are struggling to clean the water. If you've seen some of the videos, if you see, for example, the Konyaku treatment plant, the whole thing is, silted. It will have health implications. Already the work done by the University of Ghana shows that the mercury levels all over this country are much higher. That in Galamsey zones, mercury levels that have come through the underground water, through the food chain, have reached unacceptable levels. The arsenic in our water, it will destroy the cocoa farms. The bottom line is that we are already, our very existence is being threatened. I take consolation, however, that I think the acting minister has sent some letter to the Attorney General to start the processes to revoke the legislative instrument 2462 that allows for mining in the forest areas.
What was that good for? I like your template.
Yeah.
What was mining in the forest good for?
Well, certainly it made people extremely wealthy, extremely wealthy, in the billions. But probably we should flip it round. What is it good for that now government says we will not allow people to mine in the forest anymore? I think one is good because the government then realizes that if there are no people, you cannot have any.
No.
And that is where I think we have reached. The impact on our health is massive. I don't think we have calculated it. The impact on our environment is totally, almost irreversible. Our river bodies are destroyed. If you see the pra has become like our sokoko. Thick, slow-moving, heavily sedimented. The Ankobra is the same. The Ofen is the same. So it's good that we take this drastic initiative. But once more, it is not the small fry seeking to get 200 cedis to eat. It is those who make the laws, who provide protection, who take the monies out. I mean, the governor was talking about people taking what, $1 million out, and sometimes 10 million. Galamsey has created an opportunity to rape and to loot the state in ways that is undermining people's loyalty and trust to those who hold public office. Once more, I want to come back to the human factor. Yeah. I don't know how many police operations, military operations, joint operations that we have put in place the last 10 or 12 years that have failed to control this. I mean, when you are traveling around this country, you don't need to go off the main road. You can see Galamsey sites.
Right by the roadside.
By the roadside. When you fly. Okay? So it's those who ought to prevent this who have failed the people of Ghana. And their continued stay in their positions and not delivering is the biggest single security threat to this country.
What did you make of the recent directive to move police commanders from Galamsey sites who had been there for a while?
Well, I think the real question then will be, to what extent has that change either reduced the activities, stopped it, or increased it? So probably if you go and look for the funding, I'll be very happy to do
that study. A lot of funding, I'm sure. Are you one of those who calls for a state of emergency?
No. A state of emergency, let me be very blunt here, won't do anything. It's a lazy approach to tackling a problem that ought not to have been an emergency. Similar to the way that we use curfews. We wait for the problems to come and...
So go and sleep early?
Yeah.
6
go
to
and
6.
sleep. But if I don't have anything to do, several things will happen. I get more chance to rest in my room and speculate how to cause more trouble. Probably make some more babies. And when the curfew is lifted, we go back to the same problem.
But is the country not in a state of emergency now with the Galamsey situation, Professor Aning?
Yes, declaring a state of emergency. I know my friend, one professor, is saying that the Constitution has clear guidelines as to how a state of emergency must be declared and what must happen. That may be so. The Constitution may have said so. But the Constitution has also said about the need to protect the national interest. We have all these laws. They don't work. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater by bringing in new laws that empowers people to do certain things that we may not be able to control.
Would it stop the Galamsey though? I mean, what are the implications? If the president were to declare a state of emergency today, what would change? What would happen?
Well, the armed forces, the police, the forestry, customs, immigration, everyone, all these institutions will have to then go in and say, stop, drive people out, arrest people. But what I'm saying is that instead of declaring a state of emergency, nothing stopped the president from designing KPIs.
Key performance indicators.
Yeah. For the regional minister, for the regional commander, for the general officer commanding the Southern Command, Central Command, and the Northern Command. Okay? These are your terms of references. Go out there and deliver.
If you don't, you sack yourself.
Well, these institutions have their own processes for dealing with non-performance. But yeah, I mean, we don't need a state of emergency. Well, the same people who are not working now, will a state of emergency change them? No. I mean, there's this video going around where I think I don't know which, of some police officer from the Galamsey district or something, sitting in the car and counting his CDs and tying them up in bundles. Okay. A state of emergency will not change the behavior of such people.
So the government shouldn't go hard. Some people have advocated a shoot-to-kill policy.
No. Who are we shooting to kill? Is it those who made the legislation allowing people to mine in the forest? Or the person who says, I have a permit given to me by government to mine in the forest? So why do you shoot me who is doing the legal thing? Okay, and that is why I am totally against the shoot-to-kill policy and the declaration of a state of emergency. Because once more, it is the same people who have failed to deliver, who have brought us to our knees, that we are asking to declare this state of emergency or a new policy to shoot to kill.
So deal with the human factor at the very top.
At the very top, deliver. Okay, Mr. President, yeah. If there are no KPIs, let them get some KPIs now. Consistent monitoring and evaluation. If you don't deliver, you yourself, you know.
You said we have 3 years. 3 years takes us to 2028. Can I assume that Galamsey will be a big issue in that election?
It will still be an issue, definitely. Definitely. Look, what is the extent of the Galamsey that we are looking at? The gold board is now mopping up a lot of the gold, which is a good thing. But as they mop up, I think people will continue to move to new places. I mean, there's this video going around where somebody's cutting down his cocoa trees.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah. You know, so this is a much bigger problem than probably we think. It's been a political football for way too long. Those engaged in illicit financial flows just exploit the situation as, you know, different governments are uncertain about how to act. So yes, we will be talking Galamsey in 28. Yeah.
Minister of Interior recently was on record to say that when they catch Galamseyers, the foreign ones, they won't prosecute them, you'll ship them out.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he said that just when he had come into office. I was totally against it because it doesn't serve as a deterrent. And the notion that the prisons are full, yes, let them go in there and experience it. Because when I'm caught in a North American country or in a European country, they won't say that, in the morning we will give you some bread and some blue cheese with coffee, without milk and sugar. And as a Ghanaian man, that is not what is your usual breakfast. So we are bringing you to Ghana. I think that debate itself contributed to people thinking that there was a lack of seriousness in tackling the Galamsey. No sovereign republic must discriminate against itself and its citizens in the fight against crime. Crime is crime. And knowing the types of criminals from outside who are involved in the Galamsey, simply giving them a slap on their wrist and say, go home, will not do the trick. Let them go into some of our prisons, taste what their theft of government revenue has resulted in the quality of the prisons. And then when they leave them and they go back home, they will get the message clear. That chief, don't go to Ghana because when they catch you,
you've been in
the
trouble.
prisons,
Give us a sense of the nationalities involved. Well, we have Ghanaians, yes, but who are the other people? We hear a lot about Chinese. Are they the dominant foreign population involved in illegal gold mining?
Well, probably one of the most dominant. But I think the Chinese ambassador has always made it very clear.
Yeah. Who let them in?
Who led them to where the gold can be found. Okay. So we are our worst enemies. And of course, the Chinese, the Indians are involved, some techs at low level. The Burkinabes are big buyers.
Really?
The Burkinabes are big buyers. And a couple of European criminal networks are also involved. Therein lies my argument that the gold board is doing something great, but there will be a fight back. And I think those involved with the gold board's work must be given some protection. There should be a disaggregation of the interest groups, the powers that they have, their strengths, their networks within and outside Ghana, so that we can protect the gold board and what it seeks to do. But the fight back is a natural, consequence of what they are doing.
You're a student of history. Where in the world have governments been able to prosecute such a fight with success that we can learn from?
I think the Italian state has done it quite well against the mafia.
How long did it take for them to fight the mafia?
A very long time.
So we're looking at a decade?
Or 2 or 3.
Wow.
And the mafia is still there. It took a long time for the UK government to fight the IRA, eventually to negotiate.
Irish Republican Army.
Yes, yeah. But the difference is that whilst the Italian mafia challenged the state and killed politicians and judges and then prosecutors, they didn't threaten the very survival or the approach or the thing that they needed to survive. Ghana is the only country that hasn't gone to war but voluntarily poisoned its waters.
Which is a tactic that people use in war to deal with their enemies.
Yes. So that when we are escaping, then we poison the waters behind us, but we don't poison them in front. We have poisoned our waters deliberately out of greed, that were we to get the Ghana Water Company engineers here, and what they face every day as they try to get us clean water. But they know we cannot also pay, and therefore they are trying to keep the prices artificially low.
Because the prices should have gone up.
Probably 10 times what we are paying. And that is why the fight against Galamsey is what I'll call must be a total fight. Because irrespective of where you are in Ghana, Galamseyers and their colluders within the public and private space are contributing to threatening our lives, poisoning our water, the food chain, the air that we breathe, stealing money from government, impoverishing us, and then ensuring that the social welfare systems that we've sought to put in place are all being undermined and destroyed.
I'm just curious, why has the River Volta seemed to have escaped the ravages of Galamsey?
I think it's only a matter of time. I think the levels of Galamsey in the Volta region, if they are there, is considerably minuscule as compared to other regions. And probably that is where we can learn from. Why are the community leaders in the Volta region managed to be resilient in the face of this rapacious love for money? Because if you go to this hotel at Begada, I've forgotten the name, where the water flows. At night, actually daytime, you can see the fish, the fingerlings. At night, you can see the fingerlings. That's how clean the water is. So probably we need to ask ourselves, how have the community leaders in the Volta region managed to say that we are only keeping the environment and the resources for generations yet unborn, and therefore we will not allow our personal greed and our group interest to destroy the environment?
It's worth studying, I'm sure,
It certainly is.
if the cash comes. Before we go, quick comments on, say, Bawku, with your threat analysis and assessment. What can you say about the situation in Bawku?
Well, I think they are telling us that the peace enforcement is working. So, if it's working, we wait to see how sustainable it is. You see, because my understanding and interpretation of the Bawku crisis is that very few people within the town itself are the people pulling the strings. That those who are making the money out of the instability are not necessarily in the town.
It's a bit like Galamsey. The
Yeah,
people
sure. Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. So those smuggling petrol, plastics, soya bean, diesel may not necessarily be in the town at all. But also you can see the daringness in challenging the authority of the state. And we can see over the last 20 years that the firepower has improved, the organization has improved, the lack of respect for local traditional authority and the state is becoming more embedded. So yes, whilst it's encouraging right now from what we are hearing, I think the real question will be, what are the interventions that will sustain this, and how do we identify and isolate those who have been, profiteering from this conflict for a long time and deal with them? Punishing those who are involved in conflict and Galamsey sends a clear signal that, look, we will not tolerate this. Punishment must serve as a deterrent. And therein lies my concern that the 6,000 CD fine for those who perpetrated the violence at Bawku North is not deterrent enough. We could have done a little bit better.
We are recording this day before the by-election at Akwatia. There's been a massive transfer of police officers to that little town in the eastern region. What are your thoughts? And what are the security implications of that particular election?
No, I think I've always said this, that I don't think Akwatia itself, this by-election following immediately after Bawku North, would necessarily be violent, because it doesn't make tactical sense for any of the parties to necessarily want to go there and create havoc. Be that as it may, I think the police presence that's going to serve as a deterrent, useful as it is, also raises quite a lot of questions. One is that from what I'm reading, there are about 5,500 police officers there and men, and that's almost about 1/7 of the total police force in Ghana for one constituency. So once more, to come back to the threat assessment. So what it means is that the threat assessment around the Akwatia by-election is much more higher, or is much higher than what is happening in the Savannah region.
Bole,
higher than what happened in Teshi and the tensions here, and in Sotuom and in Kwanta and elsewhere. And I think it raises particular concerns. Because the essence of preventive intervention is our abilities to identify, to isolate, and to prevent those individuals or groups from causing havoc. So 1/7 of the total force
That's a lot. That's a lot of officers and men
is a lot
and
of
women.
officers on line, yeah. And I mean, if you see the logistics that are also being used, so much as it's encouraging, I think it raises more questions than answers, and why the same level of threat assessment or threat analysis was overlooked what happened in Bole, did not catch what happened in Teshi, and also in Soto. So we need to have a conversation around this, but I think it serves no one's interest that there is violence every time we have a by-election.
Yeah.
Far from it.
Finally, before we go, I don't know whether you've noticed this almost like an intertribal, inter-ethnic. On social media, there's a lot of people speaking for their tribe. There was a whole conversation around the word welcome, and in various languages, Akwaba, Obak, I don't even know how, is it, what's the word again? Obake. and you see people really taking very strong tribal ethnic groups, ethnic positions.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a threat?
Well, it just speaks to the fact that the national integration project is failing. And this is not just something that happened last week. As a young man in 1982, when I entered the University of Ghana, we were welcomed by the Historical Association of Ghana, by the Philosophical Association of Ghana, by the Aristotelian Society, by the Mathematical Association of Ghana, by the Law Society. Okay, we went to the university to learn and to be trained and prepared to be the next generation of leaders of this great country. Over the past 20 years, it is the X-Towns group welcoming you, Y-Town Association, X, So over time, or since democracy came back, we've recoiled into our ethnic identity and association as the bastion for protection, for social and political mobility, and we are now willing and prepared to fight for that ethnic dominance.
As a security analyst, how do you feel about that?
Well, once more, it is the failure of leadership to say, hang on. This argument that there's strength in diversity is true, but not that strength highlighting a particular or our individual ethnicities as competing to undermine and to threaten and to gain an upper hand. Right now, the notion of Ghanaianness is probably at its lowest ebb since we got independence. When Nkrumah started the National Integration Project and built things across this country and crafted or got people to write the national anthem, Achampong brought in the pledge, the national pledge. Okay? If we don't start a process of consciously singing the anthem, of reciting the pledge, and resorting to our ethnic identities as the only place where we feel secure and where we can get promotion to get access to public resources, then it wouldn't take much to bring our very existence into danger. And I think that is what makes it difficult to fight the Galamsey, because, but you've come to my region. Why are you fighting my people? Why didn't you go there? And that is why our assessment of the threats must be objective and neutral, devoid of all kinds of pettiness.
Finally, from the work you do, you must see a lot of like dangerous or potentially dangerous, depressing stuff. What makes you happy?
When I'm cooking,
Okay, you cook.
yeah.
All right. What's your signature dish?
Oh, I'm an experimental cook, so I try
Okay.
to try all kinds of things.
What was your last experiment?
Oh, I think just last weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you throw up?
Well, I tried to do some onion marmalade as a base
Okay.
for a tomato salad that I was making, and then I thought I would do a lime, garlic, and ginger, steamed fish sauce.
What were the security elements or threat analysis?
of ensuring that the bone doesn't choke.
Prof, I thank you so much
Well, it's a great
for your
pleasure.
time.
Well,
I've
thank
enjoyed
you.
the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. It's
Yes.
a great pleasure.
And if you haven't yet subscribed, do so right now. And let's have a conversation on security and other issues that will be coming your way. My name is Kafui Dey. God bless.